Good
Well,
morning.
good morning, good afternoon,
Afternoon.
whatever it is.
It's Henry and I talk over each other. It's going to be a good show.
How you doing today, Matt?
Doing well. How about you?
Better than I deserve. We'll go with that. It's been a long week.
Yeah.
I don't know about for you, but
I think
I'm
that's
looking
just the
forward to the
default
weekend.
state for everyone. It's just we're all busy. We all have tons going on. And I feel like every show I say, it's one of those weeks I could use an extra day in the week. And this is no exception.
Yeah. And I know we're both headed to Chicago next week for not mess this up, GTIA's Community and Council Forum, previously known as CompTIA.
Yes.
So I know there's a bit of legwork getting ready to be gone and prepping for those meetings and stuff. So should be fun though.
And there's quite literally legwork coming up when we go on a run at CCF.
I will be trailing behind you with walk. I am good for a walk. But I'll cheer you on there. Enjoy the run.
That'll be a good time. It's such an interesting event in that it's not really like a vendor show in the same way. So you're not standing around at booths. It's really just a great opportunity for everyone to come together, have conversations, chat about things, move initiatives forward. Really one of my favorite events of the year, just because there's not the pressure of a trade show.
Yeah, for those that haven't been or don't know what it is, Community and Councils Forum, CCF, is kind of about 150 kind of leaders throughout the industry come together once a year as part of GTIA, previously CompTIA, to meet and discuss kind of future direction of the industry and policies and things to kind of help raise the bar for everyone. And there are, as you said, no sales. It's purely discussions, policy. There's some research that's shared. There's no booths, no sales, anything like that. So it's a great event for hallway conversations and just kind of seeing what's next.
It's almost too good for hallway conversations because I feel like every year I apologize to MJ for not going to very many of the actual like programming of the event. You end up just talking to people the whole time.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
All right. Well, we've obviously without Josh today, but does not mean that we don't have some awesome co-hosts today. So
exactly, we have two co-hosts today.
Yeah, you want to bring them in here. We have friend of the show, Dean. Welcome back.
How's it going?
And Paul, happy to have you join us from the UK today.
Good afternoon, morning, evening, whether you are.
So, Paul, I'll just ask because somebody will ask, what time is it for you?
So right here, my clock is telling me it's 9 minutes past 4 in the afternoon. It's almost Friday evening. But I'm not on the hard stuff just yet. We've got a cup of tea on the go because we've got to keep it keep a lid on it just a bit longer.
Fair enough. Dean, I'm sure you're waiting for the eagerly for the weekend as well.
Yeah, we high winds here today. It was recycling day, and all of our recycling bins tipped over in the circle, and so our yard is downwind, so it's just full of nonsense trash. I have to go pick up after work. So,
oh, that
sounds fun.
Big weekend activity.
That's your big weekend plan, picking up trash?
Picking up trash. It's the joys of working from home.
True.
Awesome. All right. Paul, you want to give a quick intro or brief intro of who you are and what you do in the UK?
Sure. My name's Paul Croker. My last corporate role was working for a pan-European space company, which was quite cool. Got to do some pretty cool stuff there. So when people talk about rocket science, I know what that looks like, and the stuff we do is definitely not that. It was good fun, and I then decided to take those skills and those lessons and bring them across to the MSP space, helping them support businesses and clients with processes and some other bits and pieces. I also do work for a company called Asterix, and we are a certification body for IASME's Cyber Essentials. And I'm not doing that because why have one job? I mean, you can do lots of things, right? There's plenty of time in the day. I know a few people from here from the artist formerly known as CompTIA, GTIA. I'm on the EC here in the UK for that as well, heading up a couple of other community groups as well. So I'm a big fan of community, giving back, helping, supporting people, because when we collaborate, we can do some great things.
Awesome. And Dean, I don't know, have you been on since the whole empath? You want to talk about that a little bit?
I may have been, but yeah, I am now full-time with Empath. We are a LMS and really more importantly, accountability platform for MSPs. And it is the most fun I have had in the channel in a very long time. I love teaching and I love educating. So really happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, with that, Matt, you want to get into some of the news stories here?
Let's do it. Otherwise, we are going to lose listeners if they're just listening to us talk about ourselves. Paul, I have to say, though, I love artists formerly known as CompTIA. I think we're going to have to steal that.
It's yours. Use it as you will.
Okay. So first story. This one isn't so. I know a lot of the stories that we talk about are questions. This one isn't so much of a question, but just a newsworthy thing that you may have seen about that's being pretty well publicized and really an interesting vuln. So without reading the entire thread to you, VMware vulnerabilities being actively exploited. The big gist of this is there is a vulnerability in VMware that allows what many would consider to be one of the worst types of issues you can have in a virtualization platform and a hypervisor, and that is a VM escape vulnerability where you can potentially access other machines running on the platform. So I guess this isn't so much of a question answering, but an awareness thing. And I'll ask the other panelists in the form of, what should you be doing when you see something like this? And to be fair, I think the answer is in Dylan's first comment, but how do you take this? How do you respond? Like you MSPs watching this, what next? I love Dean's comment.
Well, so I have a question because I'm not super security literate. Like, does this mean that you could now jump VMs or get into the hypervisor itself?
Yeah, so if you're a networking guy, it's kind of similar to like a VLAN hopping thing where you can just access other stuff.
That's scary. I don't like that.
Yeah. So then you're kind of looking at privilege escalation and all that good stuff. And obviously implementing what you can around least privilege to try and mitigate any damage that is potentially caused by this, and then updating. But I think this also gets to some questions about the whole Broadcom purchase and acquisition of VMware and kind of the direction they plan to go with it. I guess I'm curious what your views are on the Broadcom support of VMware, and do you think that they're going to be investing where they need to around the product?
I mean, if you ask me, I think, especially for our space, VMware is not so far ahead the way they used to be, right? It wasn't that long ago where if you had real cluster needs, Hyper-V wasn't ready yet, and everything else was kind of a cobbled together open source thing. And now, if you're talking your typical SMB install that a lot of MSPs are working with, right? Your typical like 3-node-ish cluster, it's kind of hard to justify the VMware premium, especially the post-Broadcom premium, right? Hyper-V does that just as well, and there are multiple open source solutions now that work just as well too. So I think at least in the SMB, they've overplayed a little bit, but it also could be a case that they might not care, right? They're kind of going after big enterprise, and yeah, they're going to lose small customers, but I don't know that that's a problem to them. I suspect that they've accounted for that in those price increases as well. They're just not really interested in that market these days. It's my guess.
Matt, I've got a point to ask you, actually, just to dial it back a second. Have they said which version of VMware it's impacting?
I believe it said in the, I believe it did say, I couldn't read it because I'm on my laptop screen and it's like a little squiggle.
No, that's fine. So with if I had my MSP hat on, I would say, if we're looking to sort of help people with this, I would say you need to know, are you impacted with this? So first and foremost, is it a version that you've got out with your clients or you're using internally? You should really be documenting that stuff internally. So you've got an asset, software asset inventory where you can list that stuff. If you need to be patching it, or if it's something that's falling outside or is cropped up outside of a patch schedule, then yeah, I've got some stuff to do here.
Agreed. Mm-hmm. What I think is notable about this one, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of monopolizing the conversation for the moment, is usually you hear VMware vulns and you start to, usually it's to the management platform, right? And the defense against it is, well, don't have your hypervisor management console, whether it's the box directly or vCenter or whatever, accessible through the internet or outside of your management VLAN. But this is one of the first ones where just by being on a VM running on that box, you may be susceptible to it. And it just changes the exposure calculation for you, in that I can't protect against this by just having the management console walled off. And what I think that means is the patching thing. A lot of organizations aren't great about patching infrastructure, right? Hypervisor switches, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And this needs to be part of your regular patch cycle, just like OS is. All that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily need to happen every month, but this is a good opportunity to look at what your patching strategy is for your infrastructure devices. Well, you get this patch too, but also take a look at the broader picture to make sure you're not missing stuff. I guarantee all of us, me included, when I was MSPing, had like switches out there with 10-year-old firmware on it, most likely. Yep.
But it's also like the prereqs there, isn't it?
Matt, what I hear you saying is... Sorry, Matt. Just going to say, it sounds like, Matt, you're talking about defense in depth.
Right? It sounds that way.
Sorry, Paul, you were saying?
I was just going to say, this, touching on what Matt was saying there, really, it's also prerequisites. We sometimes forget about those. So we patch some of the actual key components, but we don't look at the prereq bits that's underneath it. Other software tools, classic .NET frameworks and all the other bits and pieces that could be sitting underneath the surface, they also need to be kept an eye on and making sure they're supported and running the right versions. And those damn drivers, pesky drivers.
Yeah, it doesn't help when Microsoft is signing dodgy drivers either.
Right.
So.
And not even just from a security perspective, if you wait so long, suddenly you're patching like 9 versions all at once, and that has a higher probability of blowing up in your face too.
I said it in chat earlier, but most RMM tools have either included or for an additional cost some sort of virtualization management module that can, on some level, help you track versioning, give you a way to push patches. And I know a lot of us don't ever bother to set that up. So consider that. You may already have the tools necessary to at least make this a little easier to keep control over.
And here's another thing, right? Sometimes these vendors, they say you've got to be running the latest version of their product. And if you're not patching up to that latest level, if you do have a problem and you hit the wall and it bursts into flames, they can't support you, or they won't support you because you're not on the latest version. Yeah. So it's that catch-22. I'm not sure if that's the same with VMware, but I know for some of the telco stuff I've worked in previously, that's very much been the case.
That's so annoying. Even when it has nothing to do with the version, I feel like some support departments just use that as the quick out, right? Like, hey, you're not on the latest version. Get off the phone until you upgrade.
Yeah. It's like, thanks, that really helps, right?
All right, well, let's jump into story number 2 here. So we're going to take the political side of this out of it and focus on if you didn't have CISA, and this is kind of what the post is getting at, is if you didn't have CISA as a resource, and this person uses the known exploited vulnerabilities list, the KEV list that the CISA produces on the regular, what other resources do you guys utilize or go to for security and for managing those updates that you need to know about security alerts and so forth? So I know, Matt, you keep on top of a fair amount of that. You have any go-tos? I know we also saw some things today in the news about the CIS's ISAC for election interference has been stood down, but there are other ISACs and ISALs out there. Any that come to mind for you that are go-tos?
I mean, I think you just said it, right? That's the answer is, ISACs, ISALs. Obviously, if you're in the MSP space, look at I almost said it. GTA ISAL.
Workshop for you.
Right? I know. I'm going to have a bottle of it when I get there.
Every time you say
the other thing, though, right? That's the best thing. I also subscribe to a lot of just vendor specific RSS feeds and things like where they release their own vuln information and disclosures based on what hardware you're using. And I've also had some good luck with just industry threat feeds. There are some ones that are very cheap and or free, like the one that used to be called Alien Vault. I think it got renamed to something else not too long ago. There are some that you have to pay almost nothing just to stay on top of it. That's kind of the best thing. We'll have to see what KEV ends up with, but ISACs, ISOs, and just various threat feeds around are kind of the best bet, I think, for the time being. But I'm going to turn the floor over for a second before I monopolize a second story with my answers.
Dean, Paul?
I mean, what do you say to MSPs that don't know what any of the words or acronyms you've all been talking about are to begin with, who are hearing this and like, what do you mean you're monitoring something for threat intel? What should I be doing that? What is that? Like, because that's a lot of our industry. That's me. What do we do? Should we do something? Should I be panicking right now?
Well, so I would say that ISALs and ISACs, the idea is that it is a standardized publication of known vulnerabilities and alerts, usually with a risk score that's attached to it and a summary of what that risk is, and usually a TLP level, traffic light protocol level, on discernment of how much of that information can be shared. Aside from the ISAC and ISALs, I think there's a lot of really good resources out there, websites, media, and so forth that also do a really great job. And even some influencers that put out pretty pertinent, timely topics that they're covering around cybersecurity news. Paul, I'd be curious what your views are from the other side.
Yeah.
Because I know you've got different things to worry about. You've got, what, NIST 2 over there that you now have to keep an eye on?
Yeah, there's lots of frameworks over here in the UK. The main one we tend to sort of talk about a lot is Cyber Essentials. But so many businesses aren't even doing that. We've even got MSPs over here that talk about Cyber Essentials, but don't do it themselves or put themselves through it. Yet they sell it as a service, and it's something they want their clients to be doing. So it's keeping your own house clean before you start talking about others is always a good way to do it in my book. But I think you touched on it earlier. There's GTIA have got the ISAO, which is really an untapped resource where MSPs and members will have access to that information already, rather than you have to go out and figure out, well, where do I need to get this stuff from? I'm not too up to speed on the different government portals and and systems you guys have got there for that. Here in the UK, we do have some crime police-backed, sort of government-backed entities called the CRCs, the Cyber Resilience Centres, which are split across the UK in different zones, and they try and push out free information and advice to businesses, not just in the tech space, but in all aspects. And I know we've got a connection. GTIA have got a connection into that as well.
How about non-ISAL, ISAC resources that you guys go to? Any particular websites or media that has caught your attention?
Let me find the link. There's one that's kind of tries to be an aggregator of various InfoSec sites. Not that this is the necessarily best link around, but I always did like it. I'll post it in the chat should I find it again.
Okay.
I hang out in
I
a lot of
know
Discords
I usually
around this.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think just sort of
There's a
some
lot
of
of
the
signal chats, Discord.
yeah, the community stuff we do is quite good. So I know there's lots of different forums stuff on like Tech Tribe, as you say, Discord groups, Tech Degenerates. All these groups have got some really rich tapestry of information and people's experiences. It's not until you join these things. It's like anything. Taking part is where the magic happens, right?
Yeah, and that's usually try and look also at like Hacker News, Dark Reading, Security Week, and some of those websites as well, because there's usually some pretty decent writings and publications that are put up there.
That's a good point. Like, don't be dismissive of those sites. Sometimes I'm guilty of saying, oh, if it's on Bleeping Computer, it's probably somewhere else way earlier. But the sites like that are a really good aggregator, especially if you don't have time to be checking security news all day. You'll get the big main info pretty quickly from there.
QE. Oh, yeah. Those are some good resources there. All right, let's get into story number 3. Dean, you want to take this one?
Oof. Would you start an MSP if you're guaranteed one client? This is that classic, I already have a job, but I have the opportunity to turn a client from my current job into my own customer, cut out the middleman, and all the cash is mine. Finally, I'll have a Lambo of my own. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what this surmises to. So what do y'all think? Would you abandon where you are now and start an MSP if you knew for a fact you'd have one paying client?
So I think there's a different answer between whether I would and whether somebody who's like a tech thinking about starting an MSP would. I might, if I decided I wanted to get back into the game and I had one client for sure. If you're just starting out, I mean, most MSPs start with 0 clients, so I guess starting with one guaranteed is a good leg up on that. Without defaulting to the it depends answer, I think it does matter if the person undertaking this really has an idea of how to run an MSP and is ready to go try and do that, or if they're the stereotypical, hey, I'm a tech, let me see if I can go be my own boss. That latter one might not go so well. If you have enough time working at an existing org that you have an idea of how things work and how things run and at least know the basics of how to operate this kind of thing, then for sure I would do it.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm kind of split between both sides of the fence on this. I think if you've got your wits about you and you're on the front foot and you've come from a tech-based place, but you've had some experience in business or you've come from somewhere else and you've got some grasp around the daily operational side of an organization and the business, I think, as Matt said, one client guaranteed is better than a lot of other people out there. And it depends how much they're paying and what the seat count looks like. But I'd say that's probably a good place. If you haven't, and you've only ever been on the tools, on the tech stuff, working inside a MSP, I'm not sure jumping across with just that one client is probably the right option. You need a strong network around you, I would probably say. If you've got a strong network, you've got a chance. But if you're completely on your own, I'd probably say no.
It's important to remember too, maybe the word MSP is the wrong word to use here, because this person has a day job. It sounds like this opportunity is not a conflict of interest with the day, like not a day job client, at least. Having a side hustle where you do technical work for somebody, that could totally work if you're willing to pick up that extra time and effort and anxiety. But an MSP implies management, and management implies tools to do the management. And now suddenly we're getting into costs, and something that Kyle Christensen had said to me a long time ago: every recurring tool you subscribe to, you need to think about how many new clients do I need to go pull in to offset this one tool when you're getting started. So should OP start an MSP based on one client? Probably not. Could they start doing some side work, helping keep this doctor's office running when needed? Sure, I guess if you want to. I don't want to do more work, but
here's an interesting take on it then. How about if they went into it and collaborated with another MSP to start with?
I like that kind of idea, because now you're spreading your risk out a little bit. Maybe get a little tricky on who owns the client and everything, but if you approach it as you're the IT manager for that office and bring in a co-managed situation,
you could manage it under some form of NDA.
Yeah. I think my biggest concern with it would be around what if this client decides to no longer be a client in 2 months and you've gone all in on this? Is what protections for your risk have you done, either by contract or by diversifying? Because that's a huge amount of your income to tie to one, maybe.
I'm going to get my contract on RMSP.
Yeah. Your source for all legal advice.
Yep. Don't post any legal questions there; they'll be deleted.
I think the TLDR is there's a difference between starting a business and just having a side hustle. If you're approaching something like this as a side hustle, you have the time and energy to do it, and you've been reasonable about protecting yourself and your own risk, go for it. That's no different than me making and selling cutting boards out of my garage. That's different than actually running a business. And running a business takes a lot more than just understanding tech. And you got to make sure that you really want that.
I'd probably say you need to work out what it is that you're really good at. What's your sort of superpower? What really gets you up and going and gives you a buzz, and focus on that. And if you can do that with your side hustle, perfect. And then you could partner with other people or outsource service desk or outsource something else that client needs, as well as what you can do there as well, and go in it more from a sort of consultant perspective.
Great. All right. I think we've got that fairly solved here. Paul, you want to take this next one?
Sure. So 60% of cybersecurity pros are looking to change employers. Do you know what? I'm probably going to say it's probably outside of just cybersecurity as well. I know loads of people in the tech space where this could apply to those roles and stuff as well. They're talking about higher salaries. We're talking about career growth concerns outweigh work-life balance issues. Senior staff, 53% of cybersecurity leaders are considering leaving. Salaries, security architects earn around $206,000. Engineers are around 191,000. They're quite big. They're quite chunky salaries, aren't they? Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess. What do you guys think is the cause behind this? And to Paul's point, there is this just limited to cybersecurity people, or you think it's wider?
I personally think it's wider than that. I think it's something that I've commonly seen in the technical space, mostly due to one of two factors, or I shouldn't say that. There's probably like 10 factors, but the ones I can think of offhand are work-life balance, especially in cybersecurity, the stress around incidents and dealing with ongoing active security things going on, that's extremely stressful. And if you're doing that all day, every day, yeah. Question is, if you switch to a different employer, are you still doing IR and finding yourself in the same bucket? The other thing is on the technical side, and to be honest, dealing with clients, while kind of the point of the job, is pretty stressful at times, right? There can be a lot to it, trying to manage expectations and trying to handle unrealistic demands from your clients. That always was a challenge in MSP life. So I think some of it is salary, some of it is a grass is greener, and unfortunately, some of it is an inherent property of some of these roles, which at least in my experience, I haven't seen too many people stay in that type of role for their entire career. Eventually, they get either moving to management or some kind of consulting architectural, right? Well, without opening the Pandora's box of not everyone wants to or should manage, just some kind of role that's not direct client facing seems to be where a lot of these people end up. But to your original question, Henry, I do think it's pretty widespread, and I have also observed pretty frequently people looking to move.
It's a problem with technical or skilled careers everywhere. The inherent unsexiness of actually being in the role does not match what movies have told me. I went to school for engineering, and like, you think your first few years, maybe even when you graduate, like in my case, I'm gonna be building circuits on those rockets that Paul worked on, and then you're like, oh, my first 6 years at Raytheon, I'm gonna be filling out a quality control report because they just need an engineer's signature, and if I'm lucky, maybe I'll become junior on a project. That sucks. And you add to it the other elements Matt put in. I can see somebody thinking surely somewhere else would be better.
Yeah, no, that's unfortunately, you also see that across the IT services spectrum of positions, is that people have kind of a grandiose vision, the Holly Berry vision of cybersecurity, and these we had I think we mentioned it in the previous episode, but had a gentleman that applied for a job, no certifications, no experience, still in school, wanting well into the six figures starting out. And there seems to be a disconnect between what salary expectations are versus experience and education. And yeah, I think that's probably at play here. And to your guys' point, not just in cybersecurity, but across the unsexiness realities of the job that we do.
I saw in the report as well.
And also traditionally, what's the easiest way to get a raise? I was going to say, what's the easiest way to get a raise?
Yeah.
Almost across the board is to leave, sadly.
Yeah. Part of it was also talking about retention for staff as well, having that career path. I think Matt touched on it earlier. Progression up through an organization is so key. If you're an MSP, you can, or in tech space, or working in an MSSP, whichever brand title you want to use, I think you can use that to help stand yourself out from the crowd, pull in people in, keep people in place as well, because you're spending out a lot of money to recruit these people. It's not just the salary, it's the recruitment fees and the time and the effort from external parties and your own teams to bring these people in to deliver stuff. They want to be, as you said, we touched on it before, the shiny, sexy new tech, the shiny stuff, that good stuff. We all want to be there at the sharp end. And unfortunately, every day is not like that. You have to do the boring stuff as well as the fun stuff. You can't just cherry pick.
So I'm going to ask a question of the group, because I feel like we just gave kind of a bleak outlook of working in technical roles. So if somebody came to you and said, hey, I'm looking to switch because of all this stuff, what would you tell them? Would you tell them to stay put and it's just inherent? Would you tell them, yeah, maybe it's worth looking at other stuff? What's your advice to someone who asked that question?
I think it depends on what their current role and experience are, and what their primary motivator is. If they're someone that's motivated by the dollar, I'm probably not going to have much sympathy the direction that they want to go. If they're looking to truly be engaged in the betterment of either their own education or experience, then I'm going to have a lot better advice probably on directions that they can go.
I've had the opportunity to interview and hire hundreds of technical employees at our MSP, and now literally that's what we do at Empath. And I would just say that if you want to move forward in your career, or if you want to chase the money, like Henry was saying, there's tons of advice. I would just point back to there should be some sort of evidence that this is a passion that extends beyond work. So usually I look to see, like, is this something you tinker with at home, even if you're bad at it? You know, so if you do want to do more with your career, have that passion a little bit in your hobbies at home as well, because that will help a lot of other factors. You know, if I come in to be hired by one of you, I don't have any certs, I don't have the background, but I can show you how at my house I made it so that, you know, DNS can't possibly be middleman attacked through some convoluted series of Raspberry Pis. Automatically, you know that, like, I'm willing to put into work to figure something out. And I see a lot of folks, they don't connect those dots and they just expect, well, I earned the cert or I earned the degree, paycheck. So go home and tinker.
I see it as a hybrid between the two pieces here. Organizations aren't looking necessarily to tick all the boxes on that CV. They're looking to attract the right person, the generic makeup of that person. You know, Dean touched on it then about, you know, a curious nature, a mindset to go above and beyond, and about the detail. If you've got that kind of mindset, I think you can't go too far wrong with a tech job. And people want to see and hear that. They don't want just to be able to marry up directly with a wish list of skills. There's more to it than just that.
Yeah, and we'll share it in chat here. There's Paul Jeremy put together an amazing roadmap of cybersecurity certifications and kind of their different functions and different skill levels and how they all relate to each other. It's well worth a look at if you've never seen it. So if you are in cybersecurity, looking at getting into cybersecurity, this would be a great place to look at fulfilling what actually interests you and focusing in on some education and certifications in those specific areas, whether that is on the risk management or on network security, so on and so forth. So great resource there.
All right. Move on to
our next
one.
All right, Matt, I think this is you.
Yeah. So this was an interesting post. I think it was on the MSP Reddit. It said, my BitDefender reseller passed away. BitDefender is silent on how to proceed. So the context here is that BitDefender is one of those products that's kind of impossible to remove without the uninstall key, and the new MSP can't really get support from the vendor because it requires approval to transfer from the old reseller. And the question, I think, or the discussion point isn't so much around BitDefender specifically, but the whole higher level concept of how do you protect your clients against you going out of business? Should you care about that? To what degree do clients care about that? Or how do you guys handle what happens if you as an organization go away?
Well, Matt, if you have stuff stored in a storage locker and the storage locker company goes out of business, whose responsibility is it to figure out how you're going to get your stuff? And that's the part of this that's super uncomfortable that our industry really has a lot of trouble articulating to clients. It's not my data. It's not my IT environment. I am here, you know, at your service, you know, and at your pleasure as your MSP. This is your data. This is your stuff. This is your environment. And I think just making sure that we always start with teaching our clients that you own this data. I don't own it. I will do my very best to take care of it. I will be the shepherd to your flock. I will try to make sure every sheep comes home every day. Then I'm my sheep or your sheep. You got to start there, and you got to teach your clients how to think that way. so that they're never in a position where they can be screwed by you going under.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys do things like ensure that clients have a way to get break glass access to their 365 tenant? Would be a good example. I know some orgs really lock down and like clients don't have the admin password or have access to their own DNS or things like that.
Yeah, but we absolutely provide that access because I don't want to be solely responsible for admin access. But we do try and limit it as much as possible and make it a break glass type of scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But we also look at things like key stakeholder insurance policies and things like that, so that if, you know, God forbid, I'm hit by a bus or a Mack truck tomorrow, is that things continue on, and we've got the DR plans in place to keep the business at least sustainable enough for our clients and for our staff for a period of time, so that they could migrate to another provider or someone else would step in as a leadership role here at the organization.
So for me, I think it's a great topic. It's a great headline as well. And it's one which I hadn't sort of really given too much thought about up until sort of like I read it today. MSPs are all different shapes and sizes. I think if you're a micro MSP, or if you can't step away from your organization for more than a few hours, I would say you're intricate cog. You're baked into that solution. You need to be having those discussions, business discussions with your clients around BCDR, business continuity and disaster recovery, because it's their BCDR plan, not yours. You're running the show there at the day, but it's part of their DR scenario. And that's a business discussion. And it's a grown-up, mature discussion around how they can carry on as an organization. And guess what? You can support that discussion with other parts of their business, because the chances are they've probably not thought about it.
That's really it. I mean,
For sure.
it is worth pointing out, I put it in our internal chat, why would a vendor like BitDefender take this stance? Because like, if you think about it objectively, emotionally, like somebody's just passed away, I need help, I just want to get into my stuff, why won't you help me? You know, if my father got into an accident and I wanted to get into his finances and I wasn't, you know, already in there as power of attorney or something, well, what would the bank tell me at first? Sorry, you know, you have the same last name, but too bad. If I went to a bank teller, they'd say you're not Jim Trempelis. You can't have access to his account. So some of this could likely be a vendor having simple controls in place. Otherwise, what's to stop me and Matt Topper from calling up BitDefender right now and telling them that Henry died and we want access to all his stuff? Usually vendors at this scale do have appropriate channels for this type of request, because they do understand at that size this could happen. So there likely is an avenue here. Maybe this person is just not aware of it. A smaller vendor, though, it can get tricky. You know, a small vendor that doesn't have that, you know, proper channel, just worth considering. That the vendor's not necessarily crossing their arms and being uncommunicative because they don't care. This may literally be a security control on their end.
I would be reaching out to BitDefender and say, hey, what happens in this scenario? What's the process? Because they're, as you said, Dean, they're a large enough organization. They must have controls and processes in place to validate what you're saying is happening, so they know it's not a threat actor, malicious, suspicious activity, etc. Someone trying to take over a system through a backdoor or manipulate a situation. They must have something.
Yeah. And to your point, Paul, it's worth having that conversation for somebody watching this before that happens as part of your potential DR BCP prep.
Prevention's always better than cure, right?
Yes.
All right, let's hop into our next one.
Try putting the flame-proof overalls on once you're in flames. It's pretty difficult.
It's a great visual.
All right, let's get into clients who won't use the ticketing system. What's your move? No matter how many times we tell them, clients just refuse to use the ticketing system. They'll email random texts, call directly, or even text about issues. It throws everything out of sync, and then they get mad when their issue isn't handled fast enough. We tried enforcing a strict no ticket, no service rule, but some VIPs still bypass it. Anyone have a foolproof way to get clients to actually use the system without pissing them off?
Ooh, that's a great one.
I already commented on
There's
that.
so many,
I commented
there's
on
so
that.
many options with it, though, isn't there? There's so many different sort of things that could be leading up to it.
I have one comment before I turn it over to you guys. Doesn't sound like a very strict rule if the VIPs immediately bypassed it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I would agree.
I think for me, I'll just be going and say, trying to figure out what's the pushback. Why is it not being followed? Is it too lengthy? Is it they don't understand it? How is it communicated?
I'll summarize the comment I made. You can go to the thread and read it. But basically, and this feels gross, you have to stop rewarding the behavior you don't want. And once you've done that, if you still have this with any process, if somebody's not complying with a process that otherwise fits their value proposition or their morality, why are they not following it? And so in most cases, why is following your process better for the client? If I follow it, how am I rewarded? What's the value to me? Why is not following the process worse for the client? And if I don't follow it, am I rewarded? What's the value to me? And if you look at most processes through that lens, internally as well, because you could have internal stakeholders that are causing problems there, that will usually allow you to arrive at what that thing or things are. And then you can decide if you want to align those values with the client, make changes, or just sort of shrug and move forward, which is what we usually do in MSPs. We just sort of go, and
Yeah.
How do you guys have the conversation with the not following? So sometimes I'll use analogies like, try going to finance to get your paycheck fixed, or try going to HR to get your day off approved and see how it works not following the process, right? It's the same exact thing for your support requests. And there's this weird belief sometimes that for IT support, whether internal or external, the process isn't as important or as different. And I think exactly like Dean just mentioned, you have to enforce following the process and make it clear that the answer was right in the question, right? No ticket, no process, no service. In fact, making it strict really is the answer, and you just got to do that, like difficult as it is.
And strict doesn't mean rude. Right. And that's important. That took me a long time to learn. Strict doesn't mean rude. Strict doesn't have to mean no. Strict just simply means that you've tried to shortcut and that shortcut is denied to you. And that hopefully, if anybody's listening, will make them feel slightly less gross about being strict. And think about it, if I know that anytime I need something from ConnectWise, if I just text Matt Topper, I'll get it. Why would I ever use the appropriate channel? First of all, I like talking to Matt. And if Matt actually helps me out every time, because he's a hell of a nice guy, text Matt if you need something from ConnectWise, then why would I ever follow the appropriate channel? Right? So at a certain point, Matt might feel like, well, I don't want to be in this position, but the only way around it is for him to stop enabling me to use him as a shortcut. That doesn't mean ConnectWise as a company is going to cross their arms and refuse to help me. So they're not refusing to service me. They are simply just disabling a shortcut that allows me to circumvent their proper systems.
Here we go. I'm going to turn on his head for a second. Brace yourself. We're going upside down. The process, if it's long and drawn out, is that going to be fun? And I will always stick myself as if I were to be on the client end of this now, going through this. Have I got to do 15 steps before I can log a ticket? Because if I have, that's going to be really annoying and I'm not going to like it. So if I don't like it, why the heck am I putting that on someone else? Make it simple, make it easy, as fewer steps as possible for people to use that. It will get more buy-in, more people will use it that way.
There's actually there's a term for that, process effort score.
Yeah. Look at it from a different perspective. And if it makes sense to you, give it to someone who's never seen it before, who's not technical, and say, hey, how does that work for you?
Well, and that's, people inherently are lazy and they're going to take the path of least resistance, and that gets them the best outcome. And so if it is easier and faster, and they're rewarded, to Dean's point earlier, to follow the process versus a more cumbersome, painful, slower reaction from the VIP access that they were used to. You can retrain those clients pretty easily and get them refocused on doing it the way that they should.
All of you would return the shopping trolley, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're in the parking lot, you would, yeah, right? And
Mhm.
why? Because it's morally correct. There's no benefit or punishment to doing it. It's just the right thing to do. I would guess none of you would return it if you had to go into the store first, get a code, bring it behind the store, put the code into a cage that's locked to put it in there, and the entire time it's raining. You would then find a compromise, probably because you're all wonderful people. You would prop it up on a curb or something so it wouldn't, roll into someone's car. But a process we all agree is morally sound, we will still deviate from if the effort to comply becomes too high. So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, great example.
All right, Dean, we got one last story here. You want to finish this up?
this is fascinating. Have any of you had dealings with espionage? And I'd be interested if we broke it down in two ways. Dealings with espionage you didn't know were dealings with espionage till afterwards, and dealings with espionage that you knew were dealings with espionage as they were happening.
So I will look at it from the form of corporate espionage. Yes, we've seen that. Insider threat where someone came in and tried to exfil data, and DLP was saved the baby, as it were, in this scenario. But yeah, it's interesting, uncommon, but does pop up. And it's important to have those types of considerations in place in your security controls as well as in your DR planning.
Yeah, same answer as Henry. Dealt with corporate, not nation state espionage, at least that I'm aware of.
I've not had any dealings myself or with any of the clients or stuff that I've worked with, but I know through colleagues in the industries, there are organizations that aren't able necessarily to pay high salaries for some staff in some positions. So you need to understand that could be something that could be targeted. An example of that is, for example, is like office cleaners. Somebody approached them in the city of London. Here's an extra $1,000 to plug this into any computer. I don't care which one it is, just plug it into one. And you're in the lap of the gods. As Henry said, if you've got DLP, you might be okay with that. But if you haven't, we'll see what happens.
Here's an interesting thought. So all of you are on social media, LinkedIn. Have you ever gotten a connection request or a message from, typically it's a vendor persona, but from a company that is very clearly aligned with the intelligence agency of the host country? So recently, that'll be probably like Israel or Ukraine. I'm sure we do it. I'm sure there's NSA backed. I mean, the Huntress was started by, some NSA boys. Like, part of my brain does wonder, is that not a form, maybe passive, maybe friendly to us, espionage?
Yeah, I'm actually currently investigating a vendor in the space for potential Russia ties. So it's certainly out there. I know that there are a few vendors that are working on risk scores around software companies as well, as far as where their dev team's based, and kind of trying to simplify some of that due diligence process for MSPs. But yeah, 100%. I think that's definitely a lens that we should be looking at things through.
Yeah.
Due diligence is so important. Checking where your data is being stored, what information they've got, what happens. You touched on that earlier. What happens if they disappear tomorrow? When there's a problem, what happens then? What's the clear path to flagging help? Is it easy to do that? It's all part of that discussion. And as you say, this is espionage is falling into that as well.
How would you guys handle, or how are you handling insider threats? Because I know that there was an MSP that was focused on, they were based in Georgia. They were focused of a Darknet Diaries episode where an MSP employee once no longer employed there at the MSP, still retained access to a lot of the client credentials and sold them. What do you have in place, or what are you guys doing to address those types of insider threat scenarios?
So I think it's just a lot of the basic stuff you should be doing anyway, right? When somebody leaves and has access to creds, you should be rotating creds regardless. Same thing with security basics, right? Just typical least privilege kind of things, security auditing, alerting on abnormal access, right? If you have all of your techs don't need full admin access to every single client. All of your techs don't need full admin access to your internal resources, right? It's
But
not
Matt,
just
my
another
printers
client,
need domain
it's internal.
admin.
I know. So it almost feels like a cop-out to say follow the basics, but that really is the best defense against that. Like if you have a privileged tech leave, one of the processes in offboarding is go to your password manager, see every cred they had access to, and change them. I mean, that's it.
I would probably say, yeah, absolutely. Coming on from that, having offboarding process is simple. It's the reverse of your onboarding process. When I worked for the space company, I had to devise an onboarding process that was capturing people coming in from about 6 or 7 different avenues into the organization. And I just flipped the onboarding process, and it worked an absolute dream, because we could bring people in, set them up, access to the right amounts of data, access to the right hardware. The right type of hardware was set up and configured as well as account access. And it's just rescinding that afterwards. And I'd probably say if you've got password vault management in place, then you can share credentials without divulging, in some cases, the actual password to the end user. They're clicking on, or your tech team, they're clicking on links, which might be more secure than if they were to know the individual password and just share the same admin, whatever it is, and password 123 or something.
Some of this is just a risk with working with people too. We can have every control we can think of. You think of just a non-technical business. If somebody leaves and they want to, they know more about your business to be able to come back and somehow harm it or damage it. They've worked there. That is ultimately not something you can ever fully insulate against. So try to always remember not to torch bridges, even with employees that maybe you don't like and really would like to torch their bridge. And as Paul said earlier, put their fireproof pants on after you've lit them on fire. Just bear that in mind, that relationships have repercussions, and we are all people, and people are less likely, even in situations of extreme incentivization, to be malicious towards other people they still have an emotional connection with. So don't be a jerk.
Yeah. No one likes a jerk.
Yeah, don't be a jerk is a good advice to end the show on, just about. I love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, let's wrap this up here. And if you guys don't mind, what's something you guys have coming up that you guys are working on, or where you're going to be at? Dean, you want to go first?
I'll be in Detroit next week for a Huntress Roadshow, and it's at Ford Field, so I have to pretend I'm a Lions fan. So,
sorry. Paul?
I'm actually in IT Nation in London, the Connect event. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be 3 days, community bits and pieces, which I love.
Awesome. Topper?
Next thing for me, like we talked about at the top of the show, is CCF. And a lot of my time is being consumed by IT Nation Secure right now. Registration is open for that, so go check that out. It's my shameless plug.
Awesome. Yeah, and as we talked about earlier, I will be at CCF next week in Chicago. So if you're around, come say hi. And with that, hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.